Mom, my wife, the kids, and my mother-in-law are moving in here. They're crammed into their apartment. It's no use complaining. We've already decided everything. No discussion. Ethan walked into my house that Tuesday like he always did without ringing the doorbell as if he owned the place. I was making coffee when he dropped that bombshell and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm 70 years old. I spent 40 of them working as a housekeeper to buy this house, and now my own son tells me that other people are going to live here without even asking if I agree. But what he didn't know was that as he spoke with such arrogance, I was already calculating. I was already thinking. This time, Rose Gomez wasn't going to stay quiet, accepting what was convenient for everyone but me. I just stood there with the coffee pot in my hand, watching him pace my living room as if it were his, as if all those years I spent cleaning other people's houses to have my own meant nothing, as if my opinion was an insignificant detail in a decision he had already made without me. "Did you hear me? Mom Martha is already packing. The kids Leo and Chloe are excited because they'll have more space to play. And Olivia can't be alone anymore. She's getting too old, and we can't afford a caregiver. There's plenty of room here, and you live alone." Olivia, my daughter-in-law's mother. A woman I barely knew was now going to live in my house, in my sanctuary, in the place where I had finally found peace after being widowed after raising 5 children, after a lifetime of giving and giving without getting anything in return. A stranger was going to take over my guest room, the space I had worked so hard to furnish with my own savings. "Ethan," I said, keeping my voice calm, even though something inside me was breaking. "This is my house. I bought it. I pay the mortgage." He laughed. He laughed at me as if I'd said something funny. As if a woman my age had no right to an opinion about her own life. That laugh hurt more than any shout, more than any insult. It was a laugh of contempt of superiority from someone who thinks they can decide for others without consequences. "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. It's temporary just until we find something bigger. Besides, having company will do you good. At your age, you shouldn't live alone. What if something happens to you and nobody finds out at my age?" There it was again, that phrase my children used when they wanted to manipulate me. As if turning 70 had made me incompetent. As if my life experience was worthless compared to the hasty decisions of a 40-year-old man who couldn't even provide a decent place for his own family. As if I hadn't proven for 7 decades that I knew how to take care of myself perfectly well. The truth is, I was better off living alone than when I was married. I could watch my favorite shows without anyone changing the channel. I could cook whatever I wanted. I could invite my friends over whenever I felt like it. I had learned to use a smartphone. I had my WhatsApp group with the neighborhood ladies I went for a walk in the park every morning. I didn't need anyone to take care of me. "When are you planning on bringing them?" I asked, and he didn't notice the different tone in my voice. He didn't realize I was no longer the same submissive woman from before. "This Saturday. Martha has everything ready. The kids will use your sewing room. You'll see you're going to love having them around. Olivia will stay in the guest room, and for now we'll sleep in the living room until we get settled." For now. What an obvious lie. I knew Martha well enough to know that once she set foot in here, she would never leave. I knew Ethan well enough to know that his temporary solutions became permanent burdens that I had to bear in silence. I had seen him do the same thing with his older sister when she needed a place to stay for a few days, and ended up living there for 2 years. My sewing room. That space I had turned into my personal sanctuary, where I had my sewing machine, my fabrics, my projects, where I took refuge when I needed peace. Now it was going to be the bedroom for 2 children who were not to blame for anything, but who were going to destroy my tranquility. As he continued to explain how he was going to rearrange my house, how they were going to distribute my spaces, how I was going to adapt to his new normal, I felt something deep move within me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was something more powerful. Determination. A strength I hadn't felt in years when I thought I had lost with age. I had been the mother who always said yes, the one who sacrificed for everyone, the one who put others' needs before her own, the one who worked double shifts so her children could get an education, the one who went years without buying new clothes so she could save up and buy this house. But at 70 years old in my own house with my own rules, I was no longer going to be that woman. "Okay, Ethan," I finally said, and I saw him relax, thinking he had won. "Bring them on Saturday." He smiled, satisfied, gave me a kiss on the forehead, as if I were a good little girl who had obeyed and left leaving a trail of that cheap cologne he always wore. He left thinking he had solved his problems at my expense, as he had always done. He left believing that his mother was the same woman as always, the one who never complained, the one who always found a way to make things work. But he didn't know that Rose Gomez already had other plans. He didn't know that while he was celebrating his victory, I was already mapping out my strategy. He didn't know that this time, for the first time in 70 years, I was going to play by my own rules. He didn't know he had awakened something in me that had been dormant for far too long. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of Sharon, my friend from the walking group. I needed to talk to someone who would understand, who knew what it meant to fight for your own space after giving everything for others for so long. Sharon, it's Rose. Can you come over early tomorrow? I need to talk to you about something very important. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake thinking about every detail, every move I had to make. Ethan thought he knew me, that he knew exactly how I would react. He thought I was the same submissive woman as always, the one who accepted everything without protest. But he was in for the surprise of his life. This time, Rose Gomez was going to show them what she was made of. The next day, I woke up at 5:30 in the morning, like every day since I retired. Unlike what Ethan thinks, my life isn't boring or empty. I have a routine that I like, that gives me peace, that I built for myself after decades of living for others. First, I check my phone. I have messages in the Neighborhood Friends WhatsApp group where Sharon, Tina, and other ladies share good mornings recipes and neighborhood gossip. I also have notifications from Facebook where I see photos of my grandchildren who live far away, the ones who actually value me and send me videos telling me they love me. I got up, showered, and put on my pink tracksuit, the one I bought last month when I went shopping with Sharon. I put on a little makeup, just like my granddaughter taught me over a video call. I like to look good to feel good about myself. At 70, I've learned that taking care of yourself isn't vanity, it's self-respect. I made my breakfast oatmeal with fruit black coffee and my bone health vitamin. I put on my favorite music, those James Taylor songs that take me back to when I was young. I ate peacefully at my table, looking out the window at the little garden I have in the backyard. It's not much, but it's mine. At 7, Sharon arrived, ringing the doorbell. She actually respects my house, not like some people who walk in like it's conquered territory. My friend is 68, a widow like me, and has lived alone in her apartment for 5 years. We met in the park's walking group and have been inseparable ever since. What happened, Rose? You sounded so worried yesterday. I told her everything as I poured coffee. I explained how Ethan had arrived with his decision already made, how he had treated me as if I were a child with no right to an opinion about my own life. Sharon listened with the kind of attention only true friends give those who have lived through similar situations. And what did you say to him? That it was fine, that he should bring them on Saturday. Sharon looked at me surprised. She expected me to tell her about a fight, about yelling, about tears. But I'm not that woman who explodes emotionally anymore. I've learned there are smarter ways to handle things. Rose, are you sure you know what Martha is like? Once she settles in here, she'll never leave. And with Olivia and the kids, your house will turn into chaos. Exactly. Sharon understood the situation better than my own son. She knew what it cost to maintain a home, what it meant to have privacy, how important it was to have your own space after a lifetime of serving others. That's why I have to act fast, I told her. And I saw her eyes light up with curiosity. I explained my plan to her. It wasn't something I'd improvised. It was something I had been considering for months, ever since Ethan started dropping hints about how big my house was for just one person. Ever since Martha started making comments about how nice it would be to live in a house instead of an apartment. Rose, are you serious? Are you really going to do that? Sharon, I'm 70 years old. I've worked my whole life to have something of my own. I'm not going to let anyone, not even my son, take away the peace it cost me so much to achieve. My friend smiled. That smile of complicity that only happens between women who have learned to value themselves after years of prioritizing others. That smile of someone who understands that at a certain age, you don't have time to please people who don't value you. What do you need me to do? That question confirmed why Sharon was my best friend. She didn't judge me. She didn't tell me I was overreacting. She didn't ask me to think about Ethan's feelings. She simply offered to help. That's how true friendships between mature women are. They support each other without asking too many questions. For now, I just need you to come with me to a few places this week. And if anyone asks, you don't know anything. We had a quiet breakfast while planning the details. Sharon told me her daughter had tried something similar last year, suggesting she move into a smaller house to make it easier to care for her, as if she needed to be cared for, as if they weren't the ones constantly needing financial help. It's incredible how our own children sometimes treat us worse than strangers, she said as we washed the cups, as if giving birth to them gives them the right to decide for us for the rest of our lives. Exactly. That was the reality that many women our age lived in silence. Adult children who made decisions for their mothers without consulting them, who treated them like burdens or available resources to solve their problems, who used motherly love and guilt as tools of manipulation. After breakfast, we went to the park for our daily walk. Our group met at 9 a.m. 8 ladies between 60 and 75 who had discovered the pleasure of exercising and socializing without anyone telling us what to do. Good morning. Rose, how are you this morning? Chloe Fagundes asked me, a 73-year-old woman who had been widowed 2 years ago and radiated incredible energy. Great, Chloe. Ready to walk and enjoy this beautiful day. As we walked along the park trail listening to the other ladies chat about their grandkids, their favorite soap operas, and their weekend plans, I realized how much I would miss this if Ethan got his way. A house full of people meant not being able to go out when I wanted, having to be attentive to others, losing my freedom. During the walk, Tina Chavez told us that her son had suggested she sell her car because she's too old to drive. We were all outraged. Tina drives perfectly. All her papers are in order, and she's more careful than many young people. They just don't understand that we are still people with our own lives, said Tilia Farias, a 65-year-old woman who worked part-time at a boutique. They think turning 60 is synonymous with incompetence. We all nodded. It was a theme that united us, the struggle to maintain our autonomy in a society that constantly tried to take it away. The struggle to prove that being older didn't mean being useless or dependent. After the walk, Sharon and I went to the mall. I needed to buy a few things and also wanted to browse some of my favorite stores. We had lunch at a nice restaurant, took selfies that I uploaded to Facebook, and each bought a new blouse. You know what, Rose? I think your decision is the right one. At our age, we don't have time to live to please others. She was right. At 70, I couldn't afford to waste what was left of my life being unhappy, just to please people who didn't appreciate my sacrifices. I had given enough. I had been the devoted mother, the submissive wife, the responsible employee. Now it was time to be Rose. That afternoon, when I returned home, I sat in my living room and looked at every corner. My television, where I watched my favorite shows, my couch, where I read peacefully, my table, where I ate breakfast looking at the garden. All of that was going to change if I let Ethan get his way. But I wasn't going to let him. This time, Rose Gomez was going to fight for what was hers. On Wednesday morning, while I was having my coffee and checking messages from my WhatsApp group, the doorbell rang. It was Martha. My daughter-in-law arrived with a smile that didn't fool me, that calculated smile she used when she wanted something from me. Good morning, Mom. How are you? Mom. That's what she called me when she needed something. When she didn't need anything, she barely said hello. She was holding a box of donuts as if a $5 gift was enough to soften me up for what was coming. Fine. Martha, come in. Want some coffee? Oh, yes, thank you. I came to talk about the move on Saturday. I wanted you to know that we're going to be very careful with your things. Don't you worry about a thing. My things, as if I were a guest in my own house, as if she were the new owner reassuring me about the care of my belongings. But I kept my cool, smiled, and served her coffee in my nicest cup. So, you have everything ready? I asked, as I sat across from her at my dining table. Yes, almost everything is packed. The kids are super excited. Leo asks me every day when we're moving here, and Chloe has already picked which bed she wants in the sewing room. The sewing room, my sacred space. where I had my sewing machine, my fabrics organized by color, my patterns, my half-finished projects, where I spent my afternoons creating beautiful things for myself and my friends. Now it was going to be the bedroom for 2 children who were going to mess everything up. And my mom, Olivia, is very grateful. You know, she can't live alone anymore. She forgets things. Sometimes she doesn't remember to take her medicine. She'll be better cared for here. There was the emotional manipulation, presenting the invasion of my home as an act of charity, as if I were responsible for the well-being of a woman I barely even knew, as if refusing this imposition would make me a cruel and heartless person. And where will you two be sleeping? For now, in the living room on a sofa bed we're bringing. But don't worry, we'll be very tidy. And Ethan already talked to a contact to see if we can get something bigger soon. Soon. Another lie. They had been living in that 2-bedroom apartment for 3 years because they couldn't afford anything better. Ethan worked as a rideshare driver and Martha in a clothing store, both with unstable incomes. They weren't going to get anything bigger. They were going to stay in my house indefinitely. Mom, I also wanted to tell you that we're going to help with the expenses. Don't you worry about that. Help with the expenses. How generous they were going to help pay for the electricity, water, and gas in a house that wasn't theirs, as if they were doing me a favor. As if the fact that 4 more people were living here wouldn't double or triple all the bills. How much are you planning to contribute? The question caught her by surprise. She didn't expect me to be so direct. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair and looked down. Well, we were thinking, whatever we can. You know how tough things are for everyone right now. Of course. Whatever they could. That meant they would give the bare minimum. When they could, if they could. Meanwhile, I would be stuck with all the expenses of supporting a family of 5. Martha, can I ask you something? Yes, of course. Did you two ask me if I wanted you to come live here? The question completely threw her. She got nervous, started fiddling with her napkin, and avoided my gaze. It was obvious they hadn't considered my opinion important in a decision that was going to completely change my life. Well, Mom, it's just that Ethan said you were okay with it, that you thought it would be nice to have company. He told you that? Yes, he told me you were very happy with the idea, that you were feeling very lonely here. Lies. Ethan had lied to her so she wouldn't feel guilty about the invasion. He had told her I was happy with the situation so she could sleep soundly knowing they were using me. Martha, I'm not lonely. I have my friends, my activities, my routine. This house isn't too big for me. It's perfect for me. I saw her face change. For the first time since she arrived, her confidence crumbled. She realized that maybe things weren't as Ethan had told her. But Ethan said a lot of things that aren't true. He told you he asked me if I agreed. He told you we discussed the terms. He told you I accepted voluntarily. Each question was like a slap of reality. Martha was realizing that she had been an accomplice to something that wasn't right, that she had participated in a decision made without considering my feelings. Mom, we thought you didn't think about me at all. You thought about solving your space problem and decided I was the solution. She fell silent. For the first time in 5 years of being my daughter-in-law, Martha was speechless. For the first time, she realized that maybe they had made a mistake. You don't want us to come. What do you think, Martha? Would you want 4 people to show up at your house without asking if you agreed? She didn't answer me. She just sat there, fidgeting with her napkin, processing the reality of the situation. Probably for the first time, she put herself in my shoes and realized how unfair this all was. But we've already packed everything. We already talked to the landlord of the apartment. We already told the kids. And there it was, the real reason they couldn't back out. It wasn't because they didn't understand they were wrong, but because they had already burned their bridges. They had already committed to irreversible decisions based on an imposition that should have never happened. Martha, those are problems you created when you decided for me without consulting me. I'm not responsible for the consequences of decisions I didn't make. She stood up from the table. She wasn't smiling anymore. There was no sweetness in her voice. Now she was annoyed because I wasn't cooperating with her plans as expected. "Ethan told me you would agree." Ethan was wrong. "So what are we going to do? We have nowhere to live now. That's something you two need to figure out. I didn't create this problem." She left without saying goodbye, leaving the donuts on the table as a reminder of her failed attempt at manipulation. She left angry but also worried. For the first time, she realized that Rose Gomez was not the complacent old woman they had taken for granted. When the door closed, I sat on my couch and took a deep breath. It had been the first battle, and I had won it. Martha already knew things weren't going to be as she expected. Now I had to prepare for when Ethan found out his perfect plan was starting to fall apart. I took out my phone and sent a message to Sharon. It started, "Martha came and left with a face you wouldn't believe." The reply came immediately. "Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? I'm perfect. Tomorrow we continue with the plan." For the first time in a long time, I felt powerful. I felt like Rose Gomez, not Ethan's mother or Martha's mother-in-law. I felt like a woman who knew exactly what she was worth and wasn't going to let anyone else decide for her. On Thursday night, Ethan arrived in a rage. He didn't ring the bell, he didn't say hello. He walked straight in with that annoyed face he made when things didn't go his way. I was watching my favorite soap opera peacefully on my couch when he burst into my living room like a hurricane. "What did you say to Martha?" His tone was aggressive, demanding. It wasn't the voice of a concerned son. It was the voice of a man accustomed to the women in his life obeying without question. But I wasn't the old Rose anymore. I told her the truth, that you never asked me if I agreed to you moving in here. "Oh, Mom, are you seriously going to be difficult now? We have everything ready. We already talked to the landlord. The kids already know they're moving. Now you're saying you don't want to." Being difficult. As if defending my right to decide about my own house was an old woman's tantrum. As if my feelings were an annoying obstacle in his perfect plans. "Ethan, sit down. Let's talk like adults." "I don't have time to talk. I have to work early tomorrow, and Saturday is moving day. I just need you to cooperate." "I am not going to cooperate with something I never agreed to." He stood in the middle of my living room, staring at me as if I'd gone crazy. As if a 70-year-old woman didn't have the right to change her mind or defend her own interests. "What's wrong with you? You were never this selfish before." Selfish. There was the word I'd been waiting for, the word he always used when I didn't do what he wanted, as if taking care of myself was a character flaw. Selfish for not wanting my house to be invaded, selfish for wanting to keep my peace and quiet. "You live alone in a 3-bedroom house. We're crammed into a tiny apartment. Any normal mother would be happy to help her son." Any normal mother. Another manipulation tactic. As if there were a manual for what a mother should do, and I was failing to meet my obligations. As if being a mother meant sacrificing my well-being until the day I died. "Ethan, do you have any idea how much it cost me to buy this house? Yes, I know you worked hard, but what's the point of having a big house if you don't share it with your family? The point is so I can live in peace after 70 years of giving everything for others." That answer threw him off. He didn't expect me to be so direct, to put my needs before his. He expected tears begging guilt. He didn't expect determination. "Mom, we are your family. Family is supposed to help each other. When was the last time you helped me, Ethan?" The question left him speechless. He just stood there searching his memory for any recent time he had done something for me without me asking. He couldn't find one because it didn't exist. I come to see you often." "You come when you need something. When you have money problems, when you need me to babysit the kids, when you want me to cook for some party. When was the last time you came just to see how I was doing?" He didn't answer because he knew I was right. Our visits always had an agenda. There was always something he needed from me. "Besides," I continued, "if we were really family like you say, you would have asked for my opinion before making this decision. But I thought you would agree. You've always been there for us." "Exactly. I've always been there. I've always said yes. I've always put your needs before mine. Don't you think it's time someone thought about Rose Gomez?" He saw something different in my eyes, something he hadn't seen before, a firmness he didn't expect to find, a Rose who could no longer be manipulated with guilt or emotional blackmail. "But Mom, what are we going to do? We don't have the apartment anymore." "That's your problem. I didn't make that decision. You can't be so cruel." Cruel. Another word loaded with manipulation, as if defending myself was cruelty, as if setting boundaries was malicious. "You know what's cruel, Ethan? Showing up at your mother's house and telling her that other people are going to live there without asking if she agrees. That's cruel." He finally sat on the sofa, but not to talk. He sat down because he needed to think about how to solve the problem he himself had created. "Martha is crying. The kids have already packed their toys. Olivia already sold some of her furniture." Every sentence was an attempt to make me feel guilty. Every detail was emotional pressure to make me give in. But it didn't work on me anymore. All of that happened because you made decisions based on something you never confirmed with me. "You're seriously not going to let us come? You are not coming." The answer was sharp, final. There was no room for negotiation, no space for pleading. For the first time in my life, I had set a firm boundary with my son. He stood up, angry, pacing the living room like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair. He was desperate because his perfect plan had fallen apart. "What if we pay rent? What if we contribute to all the expenses?" "No." "What if it's just temporary, just until we find something?" "No." "What if we promise not to bother you to respect your space?" "No." Every no was like a stab to his male pride. He wasn't used to women telling him no, especially not his mother. "I don't understand what's wrong with you. You used to be different." "I used to be a woman who didn't know her own worth. Now I'm a woman who does." He left, slamming the door, shouting that I was selfish, that he couldn't believe his own mother could be so heartless. He left, promising he would come back to make me see reason. But it was too late. Rose Gomez had made a decision, and there was no turning back. That night I went to bed feeling calm for the first time in days. I had confronted Ethan and I had won. I had set boundaries and I had defended them. I had defended myself. For the first time in 70 years, I felt truly free. On Friday morning, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't nervousness. It wasn't fear. It was excitement. For the first time in years, I felt completely in charge of my own decisions, and that gave me an energy I hadn't felt in a long time. After my morning routine, I called Sharon. "Ready for the most important day?" she asked, with that complicity only true friends have. "More than ready. Pick me up in an hour." The plan I had been brewing for months was finally going to be executed. It wasn't something improvised. It wasn't an emotional reaction. It was a strategic decision I had been considering ever since Ethan started dropping hints about how big my house was for just one person. Sharon arrived on time in her white sedan. The car her son had also suggested she sell because she was too old to drive. Like me, she had completely ignored that absurd suggestion. "Nervous?" she asked as I got in the car. "Not at all. On the contrary, I feel more confident than ever." Our first destination was the bank. For years, I had been saving in an account Ethan didn't know about, an account where I deposited money every month since I retired. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough for what I had planned. "Good morning, Mrs. Gomez." The manager greeted us when we arrived. "How can we help you today?" "I need to make a transfer." "A large transfer." The woman checked my account on the computer and nodded. For the last 5 years, I had been very disciplined with my savings. I lived on my pension and saved everything I earned from sewing clothes for the neighborhood ladies. "How much do you need to transfer?" I told her the exact amount. The manager raised an eyebrow in surprise but didn't ask any questions. It was my money, my decision. "Are you sure about this transaction, Mrs. Gomez?" "Completely sure." Sharon squeezed my hand while we waited for the transfer to process. She knew what this step meant to me. She knew there was no turning back. "All right, Mrs. Gomez, your transfer has been processed successfully." We left the bank and went straight to our second stop, the real estate office. Mr. Raymond Fields, a man in his 50s who had been helping me for the past few weeks, greeted us with a smile. "Mrs. Gomez, how are you? Ready to sign?" "More than ready, Mr. Fields." I sat across from his desk while he prepared all the documents. Sharon stayed by my side, witnessing one of the most important moments of my life. "Are you absolutely sure about this decision?" he asked. Once we sign, there's no way to cancel the transaction. Mr. Fields, I'm 70 years old. I've made very few truly important decisions in my life because I was always thinking about others. This is my decision, and I am completely sure. I signed each document with a steady hand. My name, Rose Gomez, appeared on every page as the sole person responsible for that transaction. There were no CO signers, no guarantors, no one else involved. It was all mine. Perfect. You'll have the keys to your new property in 24 hours. New property. The words sounded like music to my ears. A place no one knew about, that no one could claim, that was completely mine. And the other transaction, I asked. That's also being processed. The buyers are very excited. It's a beautiful house in a great location. We had no trouble finding interested parties. Sharon looked at me with admiration. She knew how difficult it had been to make this decision, how brave it was to do something like this at 70. We left the real estate office and went to a nice restaurant downtown for lunch. I needed to celebrate. I needed to feel like I was doing something special for myself. Rose, how do you feel? I feel free. Sharon, for the first time in my life, I feel completely free. And while we ate, we went over every detail of the plan. Everything was calculated, everything was planned. There was no room for improvisation or turning back. What if Ethan gets really aggressive when he finds out? Let him get as aggressive as he wants. It's not my problem anymore. That answer surprised even me. For years, I had lived worrying about my children's reactions, trying to avoid conflict, sacrificing my own peace to maintain family harmony. But not anymore. When are you going to tell them? Tomorrow, when they show up with all their stuff. Sharon smiled. She knew it was going to be a memorable moment. A moment when Rose Gomez would finally show them what she was made of. After lunch, we went to my house so I could pack a few important things. Not much, just the essentials. The clothes I liked best, my documents, some photos of my grandchildren, my jewelry, my sewing machine. Aren't you sad to leave this house? Sharon asked as I folded my favorite dresses. This house was my dream for 40 years. But now that I have it, I realize the dream wasn't the house. The dream was having a place of my own where no one could decide for me. Exactly. The house had been the symbol of my independence, but it wasn't independence itself. Independence was the ability to decide to choose to say no when necessary. As I was packing, my phone rang. It was Ethan. Mom, we need to talk. We already talked yesterday. No, we need to talk seriously. Come over here or I'm going over there. There's nothing more to talk about, Ethan. Mom, please. The kids are crying. Martha didn't sleep all night. Olivia already sold her furniture. You can't do this to us. Do this to them. As if I were the one responsible for the problem they had created with their unilateral decisions. Ethan, what you do with your lives is not my responsibility. You're my mother. Mothers are supposed to help their children. And I did for 45 years. I've done my part. I hung up the phone. There was no point in continuing a conversation that was just going in circles. Ethan still thought he could manipulate me with guilt, but that Rose no longer existed. Sharon helped me carry the boxes to her car. There weren't many things, but they were the important ones. The rest would stay with the house. Where are we going to keep these? At your place, if you don't mind, just for tonight. Of course I don't mind. I love being part of your revolution. Revolution. What a perfect word. Because that's exactly what I was doing, revolutionizing my own life. That night I had dinner at Sharon's house. We cooked together, watched a movie, talked about our plans for the coming weeks. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't worried about what others needed from me. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day, Sharon told me before I went to sleep. Tomorrow is going to be the first day of the rest of my life. And she was right. Tomorrow, Rose Gomez would be born again. Saturday arrived with a brilliant sun that seemed to light the way to my new life. I got up early, got ready with special care, and returned to my house to await the show that was about to begin. At 9 a.m, the first moving truck arrived. Ethan was driving, followed by Martha in her car with the kids and Olivia. Behind them was another vehicle with more relatives who had come to help with the move. I saw them get out with the energy of someone who is sure everything will go according to plan. Ethan directed the movers as if he were the owner of the house. Martha organized the boxes. By priority, the children ran excitedly towards the door. I went out to greet them with a calm that surprised even me. There were no nerves, no doubts, just a deep tranquility of someone who knows exactly what they are going to do. "Good morning," I said from the entrance of the house. "Good morning, Mom. We're here." "The guys are going to start unloading. Can you open the door wide so everything can fit?" "That won't be necessary, Ethan." He stopped in his tracks. The movers stood waiting for instructions. Martha looked up from the boxes she was organizing. "What do you mean it won't be necessary? You're not bringing anything into this house." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone froze, processing what I had just said. It was as if I had detonated a bomb in the middle of their perfectly planned operation. "Mom, what are you talking about? The truck is here. We brought all our things. And you're going to take all your things back." Ethan approached me with that face he made when he thought he could intimidate me, but I wasn't the same woman anymore. "Are you crazy? Do you know how much the truck cost us? Do you know everything we had to do to organize this? That's not my problem, Ethan. I never asked you to organize anything." Martha approached with the children holding her hands. Leo and Chloe looked at me confused, not understanding why Grandma wouldn't let them into what was supposed to be their new house. "Mom, what's going on? The kids want to see their rooms." "There are no rooms for you here, Martha." Olivia, who had remained silent in the car until that moment, got out leaning on her cane. She was a 75-year-old woman, thin and frail, who obviously had no idea what was happening. "Where is my room?" she asked in a weak voice. "There is no room for you here, ma'am." I answered respectfully but firmly. It was as if I had slapped the entire family. Ethan turned red with anger. Martha started to cry. The children clung to their mother, scared. "Mom, you can't do this to us. We have nowhere else to live." "That is a problem you created when you made decisions without consulting me." "But we're your family." "A family that doesn't respect me isn't a family. It's people who use me." The movers were still standing by the truck waiting for orders. The situation was becoming uncomfortable for everyone present. "Sir," one of the movers asked Ethan, "do we unload the things or not?" "Of course you unload them. She's my mother. She'll get over her tantrum." "I'm not getting over anything," I said, addressing the workers directly. "This is my house. I pay the mortgage, and I decide who comes in. You are not unloading anything." One of the movers, an older man who had obviously seen similar family situations, nodded in understanding. "We're sorry, sir, but if the lady says it's her house and she doesn't want us to unload, there's nothing we can do." Ethan completely lost control. He started shouting that I was crazy, that he couldn't believe his own mother was so cruel, that he was going to prove I wasn't in my right mind. "I'm going to talk to a lawyer. I'm going to prove you're senile and can't make decisions." "Perfect, Ethan, do that. In the meantime, get your truck out of my driveway." Martha approached me, her eyes full of tears, holding Chloe, who had started to cry. "Mom, please think about the children. It's not their fault." "Where are we going to sleep tonight?" It was the last attempt at emotional manipulation, using the children as a shield, as if I were responsible for their parents' irresponsible decisions. The children aren't to blame, but neither am I. Their parents should have thought about them before making decisions without a plan B. "You can't be so heartless," Ethan shouted. "Heartless, you know what's heartless, Ethan. Showing up at your mother's house and telling her other people are going to live there without asking if she agrees. That's heartless." The argument was attracting the neighbors' attention. Mrs. Carmen from next door had come out to water her plants, but she was obviously listening to everything. Mr. Julio was peeking through his window, not hiding his curiosity at all. "Mom, please let's talk inside. You're making a scene." "There's nothing to talk about inside because you are not coming in." Just then, Sharon arrived in her car. She had planned to come to give me moral support during this difficult moment. She got out and walked towards us with that dignity that characterized women of our generation. "Good morning, Rose. Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfectly fine, Sharon. They were just leaving." Ethan looked at her with contempt. He had always thought my friends put strange ideas in my head, as if I weren't capable of thinking for myself. "You're also to blame for this," he said to Sharon. "You probably put these crazy ideas in her head." "Young man," Sharon replied with impressive calm, "your mother doesn't need anyone to put ideas in her head. She is an intelligent woman who knows perfectly well what she's doing." "This isn't over," Ethan shouted as he led his family back to the cars. "I'll be back with a lawyer. I'll prove you're not in your right mind." "When you come back with your lawyer," I shouted as he walked away, "make sure you also bring the documents that prove this house is yours, because I have all of mine." They left as they had arrived, but with the boxes still in the truck and with a humiliation they had never experienced. They left knowing that Rose Gomez was no longer the woman they thought they knew. When the last car disappeared around the corner, Sharon hugged me. "How do you feel?" "I feel free, Sharon. For the first time in 70 years, I feel completely free." And it was true. I had stood up to my family. I had set boundaries. I had defended my rights. I had shown that Rose Gomez was much stronger than everyone thought. But this was only the beginning. The best was yet to come. All Saturday afternoon, my phone didn't stop ringing. Calls from Ethan, texts from Martha, even calls from relatives I didn't even know had my number, all with the same goal, to make me change my mind. The first call was from my sister Tina, who lives out of state and had obviously received a very distorted version of the events. "Rose, is it true you kicked Ethan and his family out? What's wrong with you?" "That boy is desperate." "Tina, I didn't kick anyone out. I simply didn't allow them to enter my house without my permission." "But he's your son, Rose. Sons can always count on their mothers." "Sons can count on their mothers, but they can't decide for them." My sister didn't understand. For her, like for many women of our generation, being a mother meant being eternally available to solve her children's problems regardless of the personal cost. Where are they going to live? Where are the children going to sleep tonight? That's something Ethan needs to solve. He created this problem. "Rose, don't be so harsh. Help them even if it's just temporarily." "No." "Tina, I've helped enough for 45 years. I hung up and turned off my phone. There was no point in listening to the same arguments over and over. The entire family had decided I was the villain of the story, the cruel mother who had abandoned her son in his time of need. Sharon stayed with me all afternoon. We cooked together, watched TV, talked about everything except the family drama. I needed normalcy. I needed to remember that there was a world beyond Ethan's problems. But at 7 in the evening, everything changed. They arrived again, but this time they weren't alone. Ethan brought John Chavez, his godfather, a 60-year-old man who had always acted as a mediator in family conflicts. "Good evening, Rose." John greeted me with that deliberate voice he used when he wanted to sound wise. "Can we come in and talk?" "Good evening, John." "Of course, come in." They entered my living room as if it were a diplomatic negotiation. John sat on the main sofa. Ethan remained standing, clearly annoyed, but trying to control himself in front of his godfather. "Rose, Ethan told me what happened. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, John. Ethan decided his family was going to live in my house without consulting me. I decided they would not. But Rose understands the situation. The boy is desperate. He doesn't have the apartment anymore. He's already spent money on the moving truck. The kids have nowhere to sleep. Those are all consequences of decisions he made without consulting me." John sighed as if he were dealing with a spoiled child. It was the same patronizing attitude I had seen my whole life, older men trying to explain to women what their duty was. "Rose, I know you feel offended because they didn't ask you, but now we need to think about practical solutions. The practical solution is for them to find another place to live. And in the meantime, you're going to leave them on the street." "I'm not leaving them anywhere. They put themselves in this situation." Ethan couldn't take it anymore and exploded. "That's enough. You can't be so selfish. We are your family." "Ethan," John interrupted him, "let me talk to your mother." He turned to me with that condescension I hated so much. "Rose, I understand you're upset, but think about the children. Think about Olivia, who is an elderly woman who needs care. Are you really going to let them sleep in the car? The emotional manipulation was now coming from someone with more experience, someone who knew exactly which buttons to push to make me feel guilty. John, neither the children nor Olivia are sleeping in the car. They are at Martha's parents' house. Ethan is exaggerating the situation to make me feel bad. He fell silent. He didn't expect me to be so well informed about the real situation. Besides, I continued, if they were really so worried about the children and Olivia, they would have planned better before making irreversible decisions. Rose, don't be resentful. The boy made a mistake, but he's sorry now. I looked at Ethan. There wasn't a hint of remorse on his face. There was only frustration that his plans hadn't worked. Are you sorry, Ethan? Are you sorry for not consulting me? Mom, I thought you would agree. That's not the question. I'm asking if you regret not consulting me. He remained silent. He couldn't admit he was wrong because that would mean accepting that I had rights he had ignored. The problem isn't whether you thought I would agree. The problem is that you made a decision about my life without including me in the conversation. John tried another strategy. Rose, what do you need to reconsider? Do you want them to pay rent? Do you want to set specific rules? I don't want anything, John. I just want them to respect my decision. And what is your final decision? That they are not going to live in my house. Ethan stood up furious. Fine, I get it. You'd rather live alone in your big house than help your own family. I'd rather live with dignity than be a slave in my own house. No one was going to make you a slave. No. Who was going to cook for 5 more people, who was going to clean up after you, who was going to take care of Olivia when she got sick, who was going to pay the electricity, water, and gas that 5 more people would consume. He didn't answer because he knew the answer was me. Rose Gomez was going to carry the entire burden while they sorted out their lives. Besides, I added, if it were really temporary, like you said, you could rent a small place for a few months, but we know it's not temporary. We know that once you're here, you would never leave. John realized he had lost. There was no argument he could use to convince me, because all my points were valid. Rose, I hope you don't regret this decision. I've regretted not making decisions for years. I'm not going to regret starting to make them. They left more quietly than they had arrived. John, accustomed to resolving family conflicts with his patriarchal wisdom, had been defeated by a 70-year-old woman who simply knew her worth. Ethan left without saying goodbye, but before he walked out, he yelled at me from the door. Don't forget that one day you'll be old and sick, and you'll need someone to take care of you. When that day comes, I replied without losing my composure, I'll hire someone to take care of me with respect, not someone who sees me as a burden. That night after Sharon left, I sat in my living room and felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. I had resisted all attempts at manipulation. I had stood my ground despite family pressure. Rose Gomez had won this most important battle of her life, but the war wasn't over yet. On Sunday, I had an early breakfast because I had an important appointment. At 10 in the morning, Mr. Raymond Fields arrived with a folder full of documents and a smile that immediately put me at ease. Good morning, Mrs. Gomez. I'm here to give you the keys to your new property. The keys. I finally had the keys to my new life in my hands. A smaller but more modern house in a quiet subdivision where nobody knew me, where nobody had expectations about what Rose Gomez should or shouldn't do. And here are the documents for the sale of this property. Everything went perfectly, ma'am. The buyers are very happy. They've already deposited the full amount. I signed the last papers feeling a mix of nostalgia and excitement. This house had been my dream for 40 years, but now it had become a battlefield. It was time to let it go. When do you need to hand over the property? Today, if possible. The buyers want to move in this week. Perfect. There was no time for regrets or doubts. Sharon arrived with her car just as the lawyer was leaving. We had arranged to pick up my things and officially move me into my new life. Ready for the big change? She asked as we loaded the last boxes. More than ready, Sharon. I feel like I'm starting a new life. As we were putting my belongings in the car, Mrs. Carmen, my longtime neighbor, came over. She had been a good, respectful, and discreet neighbor, but she was obviously curious about everything that had happened. Rose, is it true you're leaving? Yes, Carmen, I'm moving today. And was all this because of the fight with Ethan? It wasn't a fight, Carmen. It was my decision. She looked at me with that expression I knew well, that of someone who didn't understand how a mother could choose her own well-being over her children's needs. Don't you feel bad leaving the house where you lived for so many years? I feel worse for having wasted so many years not truly living. She didn't understand my answer, but she wished me luck and said goodbye with that formality people use when they don't approve of your decisions, but don't dare say it to your face. We were finishing loading when Ethan arrived. He was alone without Martha, or the kids, with a face that mixed anger and desperation. What's going on here? Why are you loading your things? I'm moving, Ethan. You're moving to where? To my new house. He stood on the sidewalk as if he had been physically struck. He didn't expect this. He expected that after a few days of my tantrum, I would give in and open the doors of my house to them. You bought another house with what money? With my money, Ethan. The money I saved for years. And this house, I sold it. The impact was immediate. He turned pale, started to tremble, and had to lean on the car to keep from falling. You sold the house. You sold our house. I sold my house, Ethan. It was never ours. But it was the family house. It was where we were going to raise the grandkids. It was our inheritance. There was the truth. He didn't care about my well-being. He wasn't worried about my happiness. He was hurt about losing the inheritance he had already taken for granted. Your inheritance is the education I gave you, the values I taught you, the opportunities I gave you to become a man. I bought this house for myself. Mom, you can't do this. Undo the sale. Talk to the buyers. It's already done, Ethan. The documents are signed. The money is in the bank. He sat on the curb and started crying like a child. He wasn't crying for me. He wasn't crying for our relationship. He was crying for the money he had lost for the house he was no longer going to inherit. Where are we going to live? Where are my children going to sleep? That's something you have to figure out like any other adult man. Sharon finished closing the trunk and gave me a sign that it was time to go. There was nothing more to do here. Ethan, I'm leaving. I hope one day you understand that what I did wasn't to hurt you but to respect myself. You can't just leave like this. I'm your son. Precisely because you are my son, I hope you'll one day learn to value the women in your life instead of using them. I got into Sharon's car without looking back. In the side mirror, I saw Ethan running after the car, shouting for me to come back to talk, that I couldn't do this to him. But it was already done. Rose Gomez had closed a chapter of her life and was opening a completely new one. How do you feel? Sharon asked me as we drove towards my new house. I feel reborn. The new house was perfect, smaller than the old one, but with everything I needed. 2 bedrooms, one for me and one for guests I actually wanted to have. A cozy living room, a modern kitchen, a small but nice garden. It's beautiful, Rose. You're going to be very happy here. She was right. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was completely mine, with no strings attached, no obligations to anyone else. That afternoon, as I was arranging my things in my new home, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Rose Gomez. Yes, this is she. This is attorney Hector Torres. I represent your son, Ethan Gomez. My client wants to contest the sale of the property on Maple Street. So Ethan had followed through on his threat. He had hired a lawyer to try to take away my right to sell my own house. Counselor, that property was mine. I have all the documents to prove it. I understand, ma'am. Perhaps we could meet to discuss a possible solution. There is nothing to discuss. Counselor, I exercised my legal right to sell a property that was entirely mine. Ma'am, my client alleges that the sale was made in a state of emotional distress and without considering family rights. I couldn't help but laugh. Ethan was trying to prove I was crazy or that the family had rights to my property. Counselor, I am 70 years old. I do not have dementia. I have all my mental faculties, and the property was in my name alone. Your client has no legal claim to that house. Would you be willing to meet with me to discuss compensation? There is nothing to discuss. Good day. I hung up and sat on my new sofa to reflect on everything that had happened. Ethan wasn't going to give up easily. He would keep pushing, threatening, trying to make me feel guilty. But I didn't care anymore. Rose Gomez had made the most important decision of her life, and there was no going back. 3 months after moving into my new house, my life had completely changed. I woke up every morning without the weight of others' expectations, without the pressure of having to please anyone else. My morning routine was still the same. A quiet breakfast, looking at my little garden, checking messages in the WhatsApp group with my friends. But now, everything had a different flavor. It was the taste of true freedom. Sharon came to visit me every Tuesday and Thursday. We had formed a sisterhood of mature women who supported each other. I had also met my new neighbors, Chloe Fagundes, a 72-year-old widow who taught knitting classes, and Olivia Chavez, a 68-year-old woman who had opened a small baking business from her home. "You know what I love most about living here," I told Sharon as we had coffee in my new kitchen. That nobody knows me as Ethan's mom or Martha's mother-in-law. Here I'm simply Rose Gomez. My new identity had blossomed in ways I hadn't expected. I had enrolled in a painting workshop at the community center. I had rediscovered my passion for sewing. But now, creating things for myself, I had learned to use my smartphone better, and had even opened an Instagram account where I posted photos of my projects. The money from the sale of my old house had allowed me not only to buy the new property, but also to have a financial cushion that gave me peace of mind. For the first time in my life, I wasn't financially dependent on anyone, and that feeling was intoxicating. "Have you heard anything from Ethan?" Sharon asked me. "His lawyer called me 2 more times, but I don't answer anymore. Tina told me they finally found a larger apartment to rent." Life had moved on for everyone. Ethan had had to face the consequences of his rash decisions, but he had finally solved his housing situation without needing to invade his mother's house. "Don't you miss them?" It was a question I often asked myself. Did I miss my family? Did I miss the noise of the children, the conversations at the table, the feeling of being needed? I miss the idea I had of them. I answered after thinking about it. I miss the illusion that they valued me, but I don't miss feeling used. That was the most honest truth I could give. For years I had confused being useful with being loved, being needed with being respected. One Sunday afternoon, while I was watering the plants in my garden, the doorbell rang. It was Leo, my 8-year-old grandson, accompanied by Chloe, my 6-year-old granddaughter. They were alone, which surprised me. "Grandma!" Leo shouted, running towards me. "Hello, my loves. What are you doing here? Where are your parents?" "Dad brought us, but he stayed in the car," Chloe explained. "He told us to tell you that he misses you a lot." Emotional manipulation using the children. Ethan had sunk to that level of desperation. "And do you miss me?" I asked, crouching down to their level. "Yes, Grandma. Why don't you live in the big house anymore?" "Because I bought a nicer house where I can be happier." "Can we see it?" "Of course." I let them in and showed them every corner of my new home. Their eyes lit up when they saw my sewing room perfectly organized with colorful fabrics and my machine running. "It's so pretty. Can you teach us to sew?" "Of course. When your parents give me permission, you can come on weekends and I'll teach you." We played for an hour. I made them their favorite cookies. We watched cartoons. We took selfies that I uploaded to my Instagram. These were genuine moments, without pressure, without a hidden agenda. When my phone rang, I knew it was Ethan asking about the kids. "Mom, are the kids there?" "Yes, they're here. Very happy, by the way." "We can come pick them up." "You can come, but only to pick them up. I'm not going to argue with you in front of them." 10 minutes later, Ethan and Martha arrived. They looked different, more tired, more serious. The financial pressures of supporting a family without external support had visibly affected them. "Hi, Mom." Ethan greeted me with a softer voice than last time. "Hello, Ethan." The children were very well behaved. Martha barely greeted me. She was still resentful about everything that had happened, probably blaming me for the difficulties they had faced. "Mom, can we talk for a moment? I already told you I won't discuss anything in front of the children. It's not to argue. I want to apologize." I definitely didn't see that coming. Ethan, my proud and stubborn son, was apologizing. "Kids, go play in the garden for a moment." When they left, Ethan sat on my new sofa and took a deep breath. "Mom, these past few months have been very difficult. Not just because of the money, but because I realized that I never asked you what you wanted. And now you understand." "Yes, now I understand that I made decisions about your life without considering your feelings, and I apologize for that." It was progress. It wasn't a full apology because he didn't mention the respect, the manipulation, or the legal threats, but it was a first step. "And what do you expect from me, Ethan?" "I don't expect anything, Mom. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong." Martha remained silent, but I saw something in her eyes that could have been understanding. Maybe she too had realized that mothers were not unlimited resources for solving other people's problems. "Ethan, I'm not your enemy. I never was. But I will no longer be the woman who says yes to everything without being asked how I feel about it." "I understand." "Do you really understand? Or are you just telling me what you think I want to hear?" He thought before answering. That gave me hope. For the first time, he was truly reflecting on my words. "I think I understand. And I think I'm scared to admit that my mom has a right to live her own life." It was the most honest statement I had heard from him in years. "The children can come visit me whenever they want. They can stay on weekends if you need time for yourselves, but they will come as beloved guests, not as my obligation." "Really? Really, but on one condition, that you respect me the way you would respect anyone else who is helping you." He nodded with a humility I hadn't seen in him since he was a child. When they left, I stayed in my living room looking at the photos I had taken with my grandchildren. They were beautiful, innocent, full of life. It wasn't their fault their parents made the decisions they did. But now the relationship was going to be on my terms. I would no longer be the grandma who said yes to everything for fear of losing her grandchildren's affection. I would be the grandma who loved them enough to teach them that older women also deserve respect. That night before sleeping, I looked at myself in the mirror of my new bedroom. I saw a 70-year-old woman who had learned to value herself. I saw Rose Gomez whole free, the master of her own decisions. I got into bed knowing that the next day I would wake up in my house with my schedule, with my plans, with my life. Finally, after so many years, I was the one deciding who to take care of. And the first person I had decided to take care of was myself.